Okay, so this mini lecture is on one of our players of motion, our player that is position. So we are interested in thinking about what it means for an object's position. And, it's something we talk about all the time. And is it really something? Do we really define it in physics? And yes, we do. And so let's really kind of break down what we mean by position. And really, it's simply an object's location in space. Now, the kind of neat thing about when we think about an object's location in space is that we kind of get to control what the space is. We define objects' positions relative to sort of a set point, a point where we say, okay, this is what I'm going to call position 0. And everything else is going to be described relative to that position 0. So if I am 20 meters away from position 0, that will be described in one way. If I'm 20 meters in the other direction, that might be described differently. Everything is defined by that position 0. So that's an important piece. The beauty of it is we get to pick it. We get to decide for every problem we look at, for anything we're going to analyze, what position 0 is. Now, position 0 is called the origin. So, the first thing we need to be thinking about is defining that 0. For position, like with everything in physics, we're going to use a numerical letter, a variable, to define that value. And the variable we use for position is x. And that probably sounds a little familiar to you. That's a position x, like the x-coordinate system, like the x-axis. And so position x, really we think about it as along the horizontal axis, but we can use it for any axis. We could use it for horizontal. We could use x along a slope. We could use x up and down. X is just a variable. It just represents position. So for the origin being position 0, we're going to define that as x equal to 0. Okay? And for now, we're going to work solely on the horizontal plane as we introduce these ideas. All right. Well, how do we define position in terms of not only its location, but its unit? So we need to have units for everything. Position's unit is defined with the meter. So the standard unit for length. And when we think about position relative to a spot, relative to 0, it's a certain distance or length away. So let's look at how that might be represented in a picture. So here's our horizontal meridian, our plane. And let's say I say position x equals to 0 is right there. If I'm at position x equals 0, I'm at this location in the world. If I'm 1 meter to the right of this location in the world, I am at position 1 meter. If I'm 1 meter to the left of that location in the world, well, I need to be able to distinguish between 1 meter to the right and 1 meter to the left. They're the same length away, but they're very different locations in the world. And I do that by using positives and negatives. So, if I am 1 meter to the left, I'm at position negative 1 meter. So anything to the right is a positive value, and anything to the left is a negative value. So if I am 2 meters to the left of this location in the world, then I am at position equal to minus 2 meters. If I'm at 3 meters to the right of this location in the world, then I am at positive 3 meters. So anything to the right is positive, anything to the left is negative. Now, that's somewhat arbitrary. I've chosen anything to the right as being positive, and I've chosen anything to the right as being negative. But that is what we use for convention. So typically when we're solving problems and we want other people to understand what we're doing, we'll use conventions. And that convention is the right is positive. So for position, a positive value indicates that you are to the right of the origin if you're on the horizontal meridian. You are up from the origin if you are on a vertical meridian. You are forward, maybe you're east, north. These are our conventions and what we'll typically use. You don't have to use them. That's the beauty of physics. You get to pick a lot. You get to pick where the origin is. You get to pick your convention, your coordinate system. We'll talk about that more when we do problem solving. Typically, if we're dealing with sort of the normal state of affairs, the normal world, then right, up, forward, east, north, those are typically positive values. And that's what we'll do in class. So any position that is to the right, up, forward, east, or north is positive, and anything to the left is negative. So I like to remember it because I pretend I put my house over here. I always keep the origin to my left because I like living in a positive world. Okay, maybe that wasn't so funny. Great job.